Artificial intelligence is now the defining technology of the 21st century. The global supply chain for AI chips is fragile, concentrated in a few places and stretched across thousands of miles. The US and China are locked in an AI race that could tilt the balance of world power within months, not years. David Sachs, a prominent Silicon Valley investor and White House advisor, is calling for urgent action, warning that fear-driven export controls may hand victory to China. He urges a shift from restriction to out-innovation, letting private companies drive breakthroughs, scaling computing infrastructure, and spreading American technology worldwide. The stakes are enormous. AI is forecast to add trillions to the global economy, and whoever secures chip supply and technological leadership will set the rules for the century ahead. Enter David Sachs, a Silicon Valley venture capitalist who's become a loud voice in the debate. As an advisor in US policy circles, he warns that the chip shortage is not a technical glitch. It's a geopolitical and economic crisis. In his view, the urgency is not just about keeping up in AI, but winning against China. If we refuse to do business with a country, we push it into China's arms, he said, summing up his belief that too much restriction without strategy could backfire severely. One big part of the problem is how fragile the global supply chain has become. Taiwan's TSMC sits at the heart of advanced chip production, turning out chips at the cutting 3-nanometer scale, with plans for 2-nanometer fabrication in 2025. That concentration means any disruption, natural disaster, political tension, shipping delay, ripples wildly. Add to that a logistical map so complex that a single AI chip might pass through more than 8 to 10 countries and travel over 25,000 miles from raw material to final assembly. Then there is raw material supply. Many of the rare earth metals, or similarly critical elements, come largely through or via China, making the chain even more geopolitically sensitive. Sachs stresses that the US versus China competition in AI is no longer theoretical. He's repeatedly sounded the alarm. In June 2025, he declared, "We have to out-innovate the competition. We have to win on innovation." He points out that China is not years and years behind us anymore when it comes to AI models. He estimates the gap might be just 3 to 6 months. Meanwhile, companies like Huawei are working hard to close the hardware gap by clustering less advanced chips together, or through networked architectures to mimic or rival performance. If Huawei's AI chips become ubiquitous, Sachs warns, we lost. We can't let that happen. To address this, Sachs calls for a shift in strategy. He believes the US must move beyond restriction and export controls and instead lean harder into innovation and diffusion. By diffusion, he means letting the American technology stack via hardware, tools, and frameworks be more exportable with security protections. Rather than trying to stifle foreign use, he argues that being so strict could inadvertently drive foreign tech players into deeper reliance on Chinese alternatives, strengthening China's ecosystem rather than weakening it. He has outlined 3 key components to make this work. First, let the private sector cook. Give companies the room to push forward R&D, experiment, take risks, without overregulation. Second, build up AI infrastructure, computing power, electricity generation, data centers. He points out that China in the last decade has doubled its power grid capacity, while in many parts of the US, growth has been flat. If the hardware isn't backed by infrastructure, power, data pipelines, fabrication, it won't matter how brilliant the chip design is. Third, build an AI ecosystem that is global, through partnerships, credible international standards, so that US technology becomes the global benchmark, not just the default in America. The economic implications are massive. PwC estimates that AI could contribute $15.7 trillion to the global economy by 2030. more than the combined GDP of China and India. If the US loses its lead because of shortages or policy missteps, it risks giving up a huge slice of that economic prize. The ripple effects of a worsening chip shortage would hit not only AI companies, but also industries like automotive, consumer electronics, health, everyone who increasingly relies on accelerators and specialized hardware. Yet, there are challenges. Even if US companies increase chip production, there remains a software and algorithmic gap. Many AI developers rely on NVIDIA's CUDA ecosystem, which has decades of optimization and developer tools. Chinese alternatives are emerging, but often with missing components, compatibility issues, or slower adoption.
Then there's the physical side, the manufacturing bottleneck. You need lithography machines, nanoscale fabrication plants, clean rooms, rare materials, export controls on critical manufacturing equipment from places like Netherlands, Japan, etc., complicate China's path to fully independent chip making. One illustrative case is DeepSeek, a startup which recently trained its R1 reasoning model using NVIDIA H800 chips, but switched to domestic Chinese hardware for deployment. The switch reflects both a desire to remain cutting edge and the constraints in hardware supply. It underscores that many firms are now forced into hybrid models, part foreign hardware, part domestic, to hedge risk. If policies adjust the right way, this moment could spark a wave of innovation. But if they don't, the US may be squeezed by both supply shortages and policy paradoxes, wanting to restrict exports, yet needing those same exports to maintain leadership. For China, this crisis and Sachs's warnings present both opportunity and test. Accelerated investment, targeted state backing for domestic chipmakers like Huawei, Cambricon, Baidu's Kunlun unit, and mandates for local sourcing. Some cities are already aiming for 70% domestic chip sourcing by 2027 in data centers. Show serious momentum. But unless the software stack, design tools, and manufacturing ecosystem keep pace, China may still find itself dependent in subtle ways, especially on global standards, foreign design IP, or even remaining import pathways. This is more than just a chip shortage. It is a turning point in global tech diplomacy, supply chain strategy, and economic power. Whether the US heeds Sachs's call to pivot toward innovation and diffusion, or double down on restriction, could determine who writes the rules in the AI-powered future.